Next up will be David Pearce, one of the co-founders of the Next Foundation and one of the current board members. Next is an alternative cryptocurrency with a market valuation of over 8 million, and one of the distinguishing features now is that it's one of the easiest coins to build onto, to build extra features out of. And so a lot of people have done that, so it's one of the most feature-rich cryptocurrencies out there right now. And I'm sure David will tell us all about it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Lodewijk. I need to spend a little bit of time fiddling around with the PDF over here. But while I'm doing this, I'd just like to thank Richard and Lodewijk for putting all of this together and the rest of the Bitcoin Wednesday crew. Thank you very much, Richard. And I'd like to thank all of you guys for turning up. And pretty nice turnout it has been so far. Now, where are we? Yep. Well, any second now we should be looking at my intro screen. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to go back a little bit and think about some more very, very basic concepts to do with cryptocurrency. How many of you here, and I'm going to ask you to put your hands up, how many of you here think that you know what cryptocurrency is and can give a good definition of it? Okay, Kaz, give it a try. I haven't actually planted him in the audience, he's just coincidentally walked in as last.
Well, cryptocurrency is a digital number that represents a certain identity.
Pretty close. So this is basically why I want to step back and actually start defining a few things about cryptocurrency. We all think we know what cryptocurrency is, and we think we know what Bitcoin is, and we possibly think we know what we can actually do with all of this. But where did it all come from, and how did it actually evolve? Now, people have been dreaming about figuring out a way to transfer electronic cash to actually make a form of money that can be stored and transferred and used electronically with the ease of everyday dollars and cents in your pocket. Now, people have been making attempts to actually get this to work since about the 1980s, and certainly in the 1990s, the first large-scale projects turned up. What all of these projects had in common was that they were using a central database on a very centralized system to allow customers to actually communicate with that database, to say to the database, transfer my euro cash over to this seller. The problem with this completely centralized form of electronic currency is that it is simply insecure for two reasons. One, if any hacker or any naughty person can get into the database, they effectively own the database. And they then own all of the money, or can modify transactions, or do anything they want to do with that database. Now, we've seen many, many, many attempts to make this work, but the first one that actually did work was coded in 2009. By a completely anonymous programmer, or possibly even a group of programmers, called Satoshi Nakamoto. And that was Bitcoin. Now, the great revolution that Bitcoin brought was the concept of using a blockchain, or the distributed ledger technology, at the core of the system. The difference here between a central database and the Bitcoin, or the distributed ledger technologies, as Chris was just talking about, is that the Bitcoin database is not held in one single place, or even in one single place in a handful of backups. It is held on every single computer that is supporting the Bitcoin network. So there are thousands, possibly even millions of copies of the basic Bitcoin blockchain in operation. If a transaction takes place, all of these computers have to communicate with each other and come to an agreement about that transaction. So what the blockchain solves is both of the problems with centralized databases. There is no central point to attack. So what are hackers going to attack? There is also no need to trust the person who is running the centralized database, because the people who are running the blockchain are the same people who are using the blockchain. That, in a nutshell, is the essence of modern cryptocurrency as we see it. Does anybody actually know what the crypto in cryptocurrency stands for? Again, I'm looking for hands. Cryptography. Basically, the securing mechanism for cryptocurrency is military-grade coding technology, or cryptography. Much of this stuff was developed in the 1970s and 1980s under great secrecy by the CIA and the NSA, and then, like all military technology, gradually released for public use, like the GPS system, at the beginnings of the 21st century. Once this cryptography became available to everybody, combining the ability to securely encrypt and encode systems and this decentralized database called the blockchain, this created modern cryptocurrency. Now, the next step after cryptocurrency is blockchain technology. So again, who wants to try and define blockchain technology, or blockchain technology as it is currently seen? Because blockchain is a bit of a buzzword right now. I'm not seeing any takers for this one. It's a tricky one, I know. Okay, there's an easy way to do it though. Blockchain technology is simply taking a technology that has up until now been used for financial transactions and applying it to all kinds of transactions, everything. One of our developers recently said pretty much every time he pays for something, interacts with a government agency, or does anything that involves data, he sees an opportunity for using the blockchain. Because although Bitcoin and many other early cryptocurrencies simply create tokens, give these tokens a value, and shuffle them around like money, that's not the only information you can move around on a blockchain. You can embed other data into the blockchain. Once you realize this, you can use it for everything. And I'm pretty sure you got an idea from Chris's, why do I have no presentation anymore? I'm pretty sure you got an idea from Chris's little presentation of exactly how many things you can use blockchain for. So this evolution of cryptocurrency into second generation cryptocurrency or blockchain technology is where Next comes in. Next is one of the pioneers of blockchain technology or second generation cryptocurrency. You can call it whichever way you like, really. And I'm just going to drag this a little bit further into the open. Okay, so that was a quick run through the basics. We have electronic cash to cryptocurrency to blockchain technology. And I'm going to pause if anybody has a question on that lot so far. I saw a movement, but not a question. Okay, so let's move on to NXT in particular. And hopefully figuring out how this next slide comes up. Okay. Nah. Where is the arrow button on this thing? Aha! Okay, so what is Next and why is it so awesome? So Next is a blockchain platform or second generation cryptocurrency. Now, by convention, we always say that Next in small letters, it refers to the software and the network, and that NXT in big letters is the cryptocurrency that is supported by this blockchain and the network. Coincidentally, NXT can also be seen as the fuel that drives transactions on the next blockchain. For everything that happens on the next blockchain, you will have to pay a certain amount of NXT to make it happen. Just like the original vision of Bitcoin, Next is completely open source, which means that all of the code is freely available for anybody to look at. Developers, users, whatever. You can look at it, take it apart, and see how it works. This is an essential part of the trust process. If you're asking people to download a piece of completely anonymous software, they have no idea what's inside it, how can you trust that? If the software is open source, this means that hundreds, possibly thousands of developers have actually looked at the code, taken it apart, checked it all out, and made sure that there's nothing sneaky hiding in there. Peer-to-peer means that the entire network operates on a very flat architecture. Within some systems, and some proposed systems for cryptocurrency at the moment, you have sort of master control systems, a group of 100 or so computers that have overall control of the network, with the rest of the computers that are contributing to the system in a subsidiary role. In NXT, everybody is completely equal. Every single computer, the computer that I'm running at home, the computer that IBM may be running in their labs as part of their NXT assessment project, all of these computers contribute the same amount to the NXT system and have the same control over the NXT system. This is also part of the original vision of Bitcoin, that everybody should be able to participate. And in NXT, we have made it so. It is completely open to absolutely everyone. Just as a little end for this one, and for the nerds amongst you, NXT has been written in Java with completely new code from the ground up. As you may have noticed from the sort of burgeoning world of cryptocurrencies, what a lot of projects tend to do is to simply take some code from the latest, hottest project, and right now it's Ethereum, change the code a very small bit, put their own name on the front, and then start trying to sell it to people. But for example, with Bitcoin, there are probably 2,000 to 3,000 cryptocurrencies that have been copied from Bitcoin. But in total, I think there are around maybe 5 to 10 blockchain technologies that have been created. You have Bitcoin, NXT, Ethereum, and a handful of others actually working on their own blockchain systems. And every other cryptocurrency is pretty much a copy of these. Next itself has been copied by around about, I would guess, about 20 to 30 other projects in total. And again, any questions about any of that? Yep. No, not particularly.
Yeah,
Right.
so you can
Yes, that does work eventually. Okay, yeah, it does. Thank you very much, mate. No, basically. I mean, they're using the technology. It is a completely open source technology, so everybody is completely free to use the technology as they wish. If they want to take Next, clone it, try to create something original with it, yeah, go for it, not a problem. I mean, we have actually cooperated with several clone projects who actually came around to us and said, I'm setting up a clone, can you give us some help? And we have helped them on the way. But so far, none of the NXT clone projects have really taken off. The best one so far, I think, peaked out at around about 1/10 the sort of value of NXT itself. But they're still running. Answers your question? Yeah, we're very cooperative and friendly people round at Next. Okay, very quick, or hopefully very quick, run through the actual history of NXT. Development started probably in the beginning of 2013, because like Bitcoin, we have a completely and utterly anonymous developer. And this developer may be one person, may be a group of people, but whoever it is or was, they were hiding under the pseudonym of BC Next. So he is pretty much our very own Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, initially, NXT was distributed via the Bitcoin Talk forum. And do any of you guys spend any time on Bitcoin Talk? Just stick your hands up if you've actually ever been on Bitcoin Talk. So yeah, a few of you know what sort of delightful place that is. But it was originally distributed there over a period of approximately 3 months. And at the time, nobody was particularly interested in a new cryptocurrency or blockchain system from a fairly unknown developer, particularly one that was written in Java. This was at the moment that Bitcoin was just running up towards $1,200, so Next didn't receive very much attention. So at the time, only 73 people decided they wanted to sign up for Next, and they contributed a total of 21 Bitcoin to actually receive the initial Next distribution, all of the NXT coins. So we have taken NXT from that initial 21 Bitcoin contribution to building it up to being worth somewhere north of $8 million today. And in between, we've had a few sort of ups and downs on the way with the cryptocurrency market. And our peak value, I think, was somewhere in the region of $80 million, around about January 2014. Now, the entire system was launched and went live towards the end of 2013 in November. But then very shortly after that, BC Next decided that he didn't actually want to be involved in a cryptocurrency as the figurehead and developer. Much like Satoshi Nakamoto, who created Bitcoin, he decided at a certain moment to leave the project and simply hand it over to the Next community. So since I think we can say round about, end of November 2014, Next has been run by a decentralized organization. Basically, the actual organization of Next reflects the way that the NXT network itself is completely decentralized. We have groups of guys working on Next all over the world. Everybody has roughly the same level of input. Obviously, people with huge amounts of skills or huge amounts of money get slightly more input than guys with less skills or less money, but in principle, the playing field is completely open. Anybody who wants to get into Next can get into Next on their own merits. And as last, the only real sort of figurehead organization that we have for NXT is the NXT Foundation, which is actually set up here in Amsterdam as a non-profit organization. We take care of marketing and general organization for NXT, because as a decentralized organization, it's quite difficult to actually run a centralized marketing campaign. And that's what the NXT Foundation is all about. If you guys want to know more about why leaderless decentralized organizations are so amazingly powerful, I can recommend the book, The Starfish and the Spider. Give it a quick Google, read it, and then you will see a completely new paradigm and a completely new way to run organizations. Right, I'm not going to take questions on this lot. How am I doing for time, Lodovike? Okay, moving on to the very important question of how does Next actually work? And what are the differences between Next and any other cryptocurrency? Now, Bitcoin and most other cryptocurrencies, certainly all of the early cryptocurrencies, worked on the basis of what they call a proof of work system. You guys have almost certainly all heard of Bitcoin mining, whereby through some magical process, new Bitcoins are created, the transactions that happen on the Bitcoin network are validated, and the network itself is secured. Now, in Bitcoin, the only way to become a miner is to buy an extremely powerful computer and to actually use it inside the Bitcoin network to competitively solve a fairly complex mathematical problem in competition with the rest of the Bitcoin network. This means that if you have 1,000 mining systems within the Bitcoin system, all of these 1,000, every single one of them, is in direct competition with the other 999 to solve a mathematical problem in order to gain the rights to create the next block in the blockchain, which will then give a reward at the moment of 25 Bitcoins and will allow you to take all of the transaction fees on transactions included in that block. Now, as you can imagine, the problem with this proof of work system is that it has led to an ever-competitive arms race. In order for people to actually get the rewards included in each block, they have to apply ever-increasing amounts of computational power, and that requires ever-increasing amounts of actual electricity to run the system. So as Bitcoin has scaled up using a proof of work system, its energy consumption has gone up incredibly rapidly. There are at the moment estimates that Bitcoin itself, purely the Bitcoin network, will be using the same amount of electricity as Ireland, the country, in about 3 to 4 years' time, assuming that it carries on scaling at the current rate. So, this is an issue with Bitcoin and with proof of work that BC Next saw. And he decided to use a system called proof of stake instead of proof of work. Basically, proof of work is a competition to solve an equation against every other computer on the network. Proof of stake is more like a lottery to receive the right to create the next block. Again, every computer on the network is the same as far as this competition is concerned, but going back to the lottery idea, the lottery tickets are the amount of Next you hold. In total, there are 1 billion NXT coins. There will never be any more created. They were all created in that one moment back in 2013. So if you hold 10 million NXT, this means that you will receive 10 times as many blocks where you can actually validate and receive the transaction fees from them as somebody who is only holding 1 million next. This means that your NXT holdings function as a sort of mining system within a proof-of-stake system. Now, I know that proof of stake versus proof of work is a bit of a hot topic and slightly complex. So anybody got a question on POW versus POS? I'll make it a quick and easy one to answer. Nope. Okay. Once we get past the proof of stake versus proof of work difference with NXT and Bitcoin, we then move on to the features that actually make NXT a second generation cryptocurrency or blockchain platform. And that is the fact that extra functionality has already been built into NXT itself. This functionality is only available in Bitcoin, most of this functionality is only available in Bitcoin, by going to a third party who is running their own project based on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. I'll give you a few examples of the extra functionality that we've built into Next somewhere on the following slide. Now, NXT, again, used as fuel for the next system, which I've covered, decentralization. One of the most important points for any cryptocurrency or blockchain technology that wishes to be used is the API. This is a system that allows you to actually take your own project and interface the code of your own project with the code of NXT. We've concentrated a hell of a lot on making the API easy to use and completely comprehensive and stable. So this gives outside projects a really easy entry point into actually interfacing with the NXT system. And see if I find the arrow key this time. So unlike Bitcoin, Next works on one block created every minute, 255 transactions per block. This means that NXT in its current form can transmit approximately 6.13 something or other transactions every second, which is pretty much the same speed as Bitcoin. I'm sure that many of you may have heard of the Bitcoin Core versus Bitcoin Classic debate, and this is all about how we are going to make Bitcoin go faster. The only way to make Bitcoin go faster is by making more space in each block so that you can stuff more transactions into each block. The 255 transactions per block limit in Next, and also the 1 minute limit, can also be changed so that Next can scale to quite a lot more than Bitcoin. But even so, we think that the sort of limit of NXT scalability as it currently is will probably be around about the 1 to 200 transactions per second, which is still probably about 50 to 70 times what the Bitcoin network is handling at the moment. Now, possibly the thing, as I said earlier, that distinguishes second generation cryptocurrency or blockchain from the old school first generation is that you are given the ability to embed data in the blockchain, data for your own project. So the question is, what can you then do with this data? Has anybody got an example of a blockchain project that uses embedded data? No. Okay, we're going to have a little talk from my colleague Paul Mahone very shortly, and he will show you how it's possible to build a complete decentralized marketplace similar to eBay or to the recently launched Open Bazaar using the simple messaging function inside NXT. One of NXT's most basic data functionalities is the ability to embed a short message with a transaction so that you can actually send NXT and some information with that NXT. What Paul has done is to take the messaging feature, ignore the actual sending of Next with it, but to build up an entire system around this messaging feature that allows you to make a decentralized marketplace. Now, once the second sort of major feature of blockchain technology and second generation crypto is that you can also create your own subsidiary cryptocurrencies or tokens. So you can take Next, spend a small amount of Next, for example 1,000, which at the moment is somewhere in the region of $10, and then create your own token that runs on the NXT blockchain. And you can then do whatever you like with this token. If, for example, Air Miles woke up in the morning and decided, we don't like this stupid centralized server client model that we're using right now, let's move over to the blockchain. What they could do was to simply move over to NXT, pay their 1,000 NXT, and then create 20 billion Air Miles tokens, and then simply use these Air Miles tokens to represent the Air Miles token balance that you guys have on your cards, or that Air Miles are holding within their own centralized server. So if you think about this for a few moments, when you combine these two abilities, the fact that you can transmit data and that you can create your own subsidiary cryptocurrencies, you can then use blockchain technology, and NXT to create a hell of a lot of things. Just running quickly through the list, crowdfunding. For example, I'm standing here because of crowdfunding. We needed to raise money for a marketing team for NXT, so we put out an appeal to the NXT community, created a crowdfunding token for the project, got people to pay NXT for that crowdfunding token, and hey presto, we raised approximately 80,000 US dollars, which we can then use for actually spending on marketing for Next and beautiful roll-up banners and that sort of thing. You can use the tokens to represent shares or securities or parts of a business. You can use the share or tokens that you create as an entirely new cryptocurrency. Anybody here heard of Nautilus coin? Nope. But, aha! We have one geezer in the corner and two guys who have heard of Nautilus but aren't raising their hands. Thank you very much, guys. Nautilus is a fairly successful small-scale cryptocurrency. It peaked out with a market capitalization around about $1.5 million. It was basically set up to give a cryptocurrency solution that could be used by the Greek tourist industry. The project is still running. The value of Nautilus coin, as with everything else, is going up and down and up and down. But Nautilus runs purely on NXT. It is nothing more than an NXT subsidiary currency. And it works pretty damn well, I've got to say. You've also got, as I said, secure and encrypted messaging. You can publish data on the blockchain and allow other people to verify it, for example, identity systems. You can sell stuff on a marketplace. Next itself has an inbuilt marketplace. It's not the absolute world's best, and the stuff that Paul has done is an improvement on it, but it's still a functional marketplace, and particularly good for electronic transfers. You can either invest in NXT itself and hope that the value goes up, or you could invest in NXT assets or currencies, in the systems that are using NXT subsidiary tokens and in the projects that are using NXT subsidiary tokens. And many of these projects have seen quite serious value rises. And some of them have even got some actual useful real-world uses. One of the last things that we included in the NXT system itself was a voting system, which allows us to actually gather feedback from the entire NXT network and make decisions based on that feedback. Also, the voting system can be used for other purposes. We recently found out that during the presidential primaries in Utah, that the Republican Party had set up an online voting system using a front end that was simply written custom website, but that the back end was actually using NXT. They didn't credit us for it, but hey, they used us, so that makes me quite happy. And it was, by all accounts, pretty easy to code. No more than a couple of weeks' work to get the front end up and running and fully integrated with NXT, and then away they go. As last, gaming token system creation. If you have a cryptocurrency, or sorry, a currency within, for example, World of Warcraft or EVE Online, why not create it on NXT? And then secure that currency using the NXT blockchain. Digibyte, yes. because Digibyte is pretty well aimed at the gaming industry. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff that Next could be used for, but that it hasn't gained much adoption for yet. But we are still in our baby shoes. Right now we're concentrating on the sort of fintech and finance industries. But I'd really love to see somebody actually try and take Next seriously into the world of gaming, because it is a bloody good system. Now, hopefully, right, just trying to see if there's any other things that I'd like to add here. Dividend-paying assets, just to make things even more complicated. Okay, another feature, dividend-paying assets. If, for example, I decide that I wish to start up Dave Range Rover customization, but I need to find $100,000 to buy my first Range Rover, customize it, lower it, put a massive V8 and twin turbos in it, and then sell it. So I go back to crowdfunding, create Dave Range Rover tokens, sell them on the NXT's decentralized marketplaces, and then I eventually will receive $100,000 worth of NXT. I then take my $100,000 worth of NXT, turn it into actual dollars, buy a Range Rover, pimp it up, sell it for $125,000. I then take the $25,000, put most of it in my back pocket, and then pay out a certain amount of the rest, for example, 5, 10, 15, whatever $1,000, as dividends to the guys who have originally given me the Next, who have originally made an investment in my company. And this can all be done natively from within the NXT client. Okay, I think, judging by Richard, I need to start wrapping this up very quickly. So, okay, any questions about anything whatsoever related to Next, cryptocurrency, blockchain?
What are your next steps?
Very good question. As a decentralized organization and a leaderless organization, we don't actually have anybody imposing a vision from above telling us where we're going to go. So what we do have is a lot of individual projects and individual people working on various projects. So even I, who am sort of one of the guys in the middle of the NXT project, don't really know what's going to happen next. I do know that we've got a lot of financial technology stuff coming up. So we're going to be concentrating on the fintech industry for the time being. What I personally want to do is to start concentrating more on the voting and governance system. As the Republican Party of Utah have shown us, it really is amazingly simple and effective to create an online voting system using NXT. So that's where I'd like to see Next going to next, if I'm allowed to say that. Okay, I've got to stop standing in front of speakers, it's a bad habit. Okay.
I had a question about the relationship between the value of the total market cap of NXT, so the platform currency, and the sub-currency. Because, I mean, intuition says that the value of the platform currency must be a lot more than the value of the sub-currency tokens.
In theory, and okay, hang on, we'll do this with microphone.
Yeah, but the feedback, so
Yeah.
don't even try. Okay, so the question was about the relationship between the market cap of the NXTs, of the platform currency, and the sub-currencies, because intuition says that the value of NXT must be a lot bigger than the value of the sub-currencies, because the value of the platform currency, NXT, actually secures the sub-currency.
That's where you're slightly wrong, because the value of NXT does not support the value of the subsidiary currencies. What should support the value of the subsidiary currencies, and it isn't always the case, is the project that is issuing the subsidiary currency. Next is purely a platform. So in theory, if you purchase a handful of Dave Range Rover assets from me and expect a dividend payout, what you're investing in is my business and not in Next itself. Does that make sense?
Well, not really, because if I own 51% of the market cap of Next, I own the platform.
If you own 51% of Next, you can do anything with it. So,
Yeah,
but
also the sub-currency, so you assume that, I mean,
if you have 51% of NXT, this means that theoretically you have almost control of the NXT blockchain. And you could then, for example, wipe out subsidiary currencies with a flick of your wrist, basically. But that isn't what should be happening. I mean, the subsidiary currencies are entirely independent of NXT itself. And I could see a possibility for a scenario where a subsidiary currency could in fact become worth more than NXT itself. But there's a caveat to this. The only way that that is going to happen is if the subsidiary currency is traded outside the NEXT system and in the mainstream. If we have a subsidiary currency that is purely traded within NEXT itself, then yes, the value of a subsidiary currency can never exceed the market cap of NEXT. That would be impossible. But because these currencies are designed to be taken out into the wild world using our API, that will not be a problem. But I'd like to see it happen, actually. Does that make more sense?
All right.
Yes, so would I, actually.
That would be the last question that we have time for, because it's really time for the next presentation.
Yes, it's time for the next presentation.